So you've listened to a lot of stuff today, so I won't keep you too long as we wrap up today's teaching and learning and whatever else you've been doing today. However, Deuteronomy chapter 6 talks about writing God's law on our hearts. It's especially in the context of passing God's law from generation to generation. And it tells us how it works. It tells us when the right time is to grow people in faith and grow people in character. And you know when the right time is? It says when you wake up, when you eat, when you walk along the road, when you go to sleep. That means all the time, the run of life is the right time. Reality is, in your role of shaping character, in your role of shaping lives for eternity, you get all sorts of opportunities in all sorts of ways. What happens, the pictures of God you're giving, it isn't just about what happens in a Bible class. I choose to have my children at Edinburgh College, not because they have a Bible class, but because there's a whole environment when they eat, when they play, when they're walking from class to class. It's a whole environment. And you get the opportunity to be part of making that environment. You never know which aspect or when you're going to make a difference. And my guess is most of you can still remember words that your school teachers spoke to you. Things that might have been encouraging, or sometimes you hear stories that are a little discouraging, but there's probably things you can think about. It was a pleasure today to meet, and when I was talking earlier, I kept glancing over this way, thinking, is that really Mr. Farquharson? In grade 4, I couldn't even spell his name, but he was my teacher. And I still have memories and words and things that he explained and ways he treated me that stay in my mind. The way he treated me matters more than what he taught me as far as where I'm up to now, in my opinion. And it wasn't his fault that I write so messy. He did give me one of those great big triangles on my pencil to try and sort my messy writing out, but we didn't win at that one. But there's all sorts of spaces and times when you don't know which minute it might be, which comment it might be, which conversation might be the one that makes the difference. Wes Stafford, who's the president and CEO of Compassion International, he's written a lovely little book called Just a Minute. And he does a wonderful talk that matches the book. In this book, he talks about, it's just lots of stories. And all these stories are about when a minute, just a small conversation, has triggered someone's life change, or they've reflected on those words, and it's meant a significant thing to the trajectory of their life. His very first story is about a teacher, and not surprisingly, teachers feature in here lots. And he's talking about a conference where he was speaking, and he was talking about the power of a minute. And he invited anyone who wants to talk about a time when a minute has made a difference for them. And as a young man in the third row stood up, he explained that he was now in his first year of teaching. He's absolutely loving it. He told of a troubled beginner as a first grader. He had a terrible stutter. He was timid. He felt alone. He was in a crowded classroom. He lived for recess and dismissal at the end of the day. He said that is until his homeroom teacher saw how he was struggling and stepped in. She wrote kind words on his work. Those kind words he still kept. She praised him. She gave him some of the few hugs that he ever remembers receiving as a child. He says, I loved her, and I decided right then and there that I was going to grow up to be a teacher, just like her. So here I am because of her. What she did made a difference. Where Stafford goes on to explain, he said to the young guy, have you ever told her this? And he said, she'll be hearing this right now. And where Stafford thought, well, maybe in his theology he has her in heaven listening. He goes, she's sitting over the other side of the room. And he writes how this older grey-haired teacher stood up with dignity. He ran over and threw his arms around her. Do you know what? The kids that lock eyes with you at the end of next week, you don't know which minute or which conversation or which comment that you've made on their work or which word of encouragement you give them. You don't know which one of those minutes is going to be the one that makes the difference. You don't know how you can shape the trajectory of someone's life. And reality is, on this planet, you might never know. But I'm sure that when we get to eternity, then there's a special place for teachers who are going to be able to see when they've invested into the lives of a student and just how they've shaped a student's trajectory in life and just how people have taken different directions because the words a teacher spoke to them. My oldest boy, Brad, and my boys are back in my office at the moment, so they're not listening to this now, so that's okay. My oldest boy, Brad, he's in year 7 now, and wonderful kid, but has struggled with learning difficulty. He's got limited short-term memory or next to no short-term memory, which is really nice at some things because he forgives really quickly and doesn't hold grudges because he's just forgotten about it real quick. But it does mean other things, like when he was growing up, each year the teacher would say, Brendan and Amanda, can you please put time into teaching him how to tell the time? And we did that last year and the year before and the year before and the year before. And it's like teaching a goldfish, but he's a wonderful kid. And school was, and this is no criticism whatsoever at the school he attended. For the school he attended, my second and third, Ben and James, it worked really well for them. So I'm not trying to say anything about that school, by the way. But school was getting increasingly difficult for him. He hated school. He'd written himself off. Amanda and I recall one conversation when he was, God's supposed to give everyone a gift, but I don't think he made me good at anything. However, we've come to Melbourne for work. He now attends Edinburgh. And I can't sing the praises of Edinburgh staff enough. They probably will never know just what difference they make because they don't know the kid they got. And they don't know, or they don't see entirely what's happened in the space of a year. But let me tell you, that boy, a few weeks ago, we were at the school picking up some stuff on a Sunday out of his locker. And I said, Brad, you almost finished your first year of high school. How did it all work out? He goes, love it. I said, what's the difference? And once again, it's not a criticism of his old school, but he said, my old school thought I was dumb. For some reason, this school thinks I'm smart. And you know what? The teachers, they know what they've got in that child. But for some reason, he believes in himself. It's made all the difference. And Amanda and I were just chatting last night, just talking about what difference that's made, that somehow, somewhere, you've got a bunch of teachers in an environment that a kid who had decided that I'm good at nothing is now, they think I'm smart. And he engages in stuff. Mr. Jones, and I'm debating in my mind, do I put him out by name? And I will. Because I don't know how long you've been teaching. He's got to be over 20 years. And I admire how he still has passion to grow young people. So I talked about Brad, and he goes, Brad's a great kid. Now, Brad's not good at sport at all. He's incredibly uncoordinated. But Mr. Jones, Brad's saying, Mr. Jones said, I'm really good at being a goalie. Mr. Jones says, it doesn't matter if you're the best long jumper or not because someone has to rake the long jump pit, and that's also really important. Mr. Jones taught him that he's part of a community, and when you're part of a community, it's not just about sport. This Mr. Jones, he doesn't teach sport. Well, he does, but he teaches how to think about life and how to think about community. And you know what? I admire that you're still passionate about shaping every kid, and I admire how you care about kids, and I think that's absolutely wonderful. And I know he's just an example of lots of teachers who really care. There's I'm about to call her Miss Gillen. Did you change to Mrs. Wood when you married, or did you keep your maiden name? Where are you? Mrs. Wood now? Yeah, see, my wife never changed her last name, so I don't assume that happens. I don't have that sort of control I shouldn't say that. I'll just forget that. Just leave that part aside. Do you know what? She makes Bible fun. And I love it that I send my kid to a school. He comes home and the wonderment is there. And he's able to explore and talk about how big God is and explore what it is to be a Christian. And Bible is something that he enjoys. So that's really cool. And there's a teacher there that whatever effort she puts in, she's going to make Bible fun. Mr. Croft, you're sitting across here earlier, not sure where he is now. Right here. This guy's science is fun. And Brad, who he's wired up for creation, that's his worship. He does this whole man versus wild thing, and I was looking at the notes of that and it's saying, well, it's not man versus wild. It's about we're part of God's big plan and part of God's big environment. And science and the hours you put into making science engaging, creative and fun. And you can keep talking about teachers. But you know what? I know because you've made a difference for the child that I care about. But it's the same for all these children who are going to sit in front of you at the end of next week. They're someone's kid, and at the very least, they're God's children. I really appreciate how teachers take the time to care and invest into the life, and how in an Adventist school, teachers are teaching way more than just simply sport or simply a Bible curriculum or simply a science curriculum. You really are shaping character. And that's wonderful, and I thank you for that. Just a minute can make a huge difference. And you don't know which minute that's going to be. You don't know which comment is going to resonate with that kid. You don't know which little thing you've written on a report card or which little statement you've made, which all of a sudden is going to be something that kid is going to get some belief or think of themselves differently. And you don't know what that's going to do to the trajectory of their life. And that's a really important thing. So as we come to the end of today, you've probably learned lots of different things. You've probably explored lots of different things. But I just want to remind you, it's easy for me to say it because I'm not the one that's going to sit there and be writing reports late into the night and putting lesson programs together. But what you do matters. What you do matters way more than we probably realise. What you do matters for now and for eternity. And when you put that effort in, even if you don't see the immediate thanks and the immediate growth at that point, there's going to be kids, and already there's kids who are growing up and my boys were trying to guess Mr. Farquharson's age. He looks a bit younger because he's got that cool hairstyle. But then they started working out, well, if my dad's this age and he was my dad's teacher in grade 5, and so we were driving away in the car when I was taking my boys back to the office, working out, you don't know how many children you've shaped into young adults and what comments that you've spoken that replay in their minds, because they do. And you know they do because you can probably reflect back on teachers as well. So teachers, thank you. I want to encourage you. I want to let you know that what you're doing really matters. As we come to the end of the day, if anyone wants this book, it's really cool. There's lots of really good staff worships in there. If you can tell me the 5 reasons are on this planet, and Paul says there's 5 things in Romans 12 that a living sacrifice does, can anyone just stand up and tell me those 5? Romans 12 says we're here for, and there was 5 verbs. I can hear bits and pieces. Brooke? Who said that? Come and grab a book. I thought Brooke Davidson was going to get it. She's just a new teacher in your conference, and she grew up in the church I pastored, and I've been trying to tell her growing, serving, connecting, sharing, worshipping ever since she was born. Another good book. No, it's not a good book. This is a brilliant book because it's written by my wife, by Amanda Buse. She didn't change her name. It's printed by Science, but it's a teen, young adult fiction. If you would like this book, and you'll probably find someone in your class who down the track you think that's a good book to share with them. If you can tell me the 5 pictures of God that Sky Jathani outlines, he says we're mixtures of 5 pictures. If anyone can just tell me 5 pictures of God. Here we go. Excellent, well done. Because I drew them. Okay, one more book to give away and then we'll be done. If you can tell me, I talked about 6 different ways we're wired up to connect with God. You don't need the whole lot, but even if you can give me 4, this gentleman back here. Well done, you took those notes well. Hey, well done, Jason. So as we come to today, we've talked lots about all sorts of things, but in the end, it's not about putting Jesus first, it's about making him centre in all aspects of life. In our, well, as Paul says, our ordinary everyday lives, our eating, our sleeping, going to work, walking around lives, making him the centre of it all. And that's the song we're going to sing to finish off our day today, about Jesus being the centre of it all, of your classroom, of your teaching, the way you go about leading in your home, in your school, the way you go about being God's child.